So here I am with part 3 of my Masterpiece Collection discussion series. This series it's gone a little bit longer than I thought it would actually, because I've just waffled like crazy. But this section is a bit of a weird one really, because I don't collect season 2 bots, but I've ended up picking up a few just as part of bundles and things like that. Plus I have some pieces in my display which aren't really, they don't really fit anywhere else, so they've gone into like a second detail, mainly because they're too big or whatever. But anyway, this is a bit of a weird one, this video, because there's no real theme to this collection, as you can see from this quick establishing shot. We have what is, well, it was billed as a KO, but actually I'm pretty damn sure it's not. It's an official smokescreen. I cannot for the life of me remember what MP number that is, but he came as part of a bundle, 3 Nissans for 55 quid on eBay. Really good bargain, to be honest. I really like the way he looks. I love the colour scheme. It's probably my favourite colour scheme actually out of all of them. I don't know why, I think it really pops the red and blue. He's pretty toon accurate. I mean, he was a lot squatter in the toon, a lot more compact compared to the other models, but obviously they just use the same mould again, so he doesn't really quite carry that off, although the head sculpt is a bit more in keeping with his toon appearances. But I really like him. I mean, he's a standard Nissan mould, there's nothing really special to write home about, but it's a cool looking figure. This here is, it's actually, it's Powerglide obviously, and it looks like it's DX9's version of the character, but it's actually the Art of Duplicates KO. Now, I never intended to buy this. I didn't really have, I mean, I had fond memories of the Girl Who Loved Powerglide episode from the G1 series, but I never really intended to pick up Powerglide as a character. But then my little boy found my G1 Powerglide and loved it, so I got this just so that I could show him when he came to visit. And not that I'd let him anywhere near it, because he managed to break the pin out of the G1 Powerglide. Thankfully I repaired it. But I think this is a great figure really. I mean, it's a really solid KO as well. You'd be hard pushed to tell it apart. The paint's really good, the build quality is really good. I mean, even the paint on the little minifigure, the Astoria minifigure, is really well done. I think the DX9 probably slightly better finish, but even that had issues from what I've read. This is a really nice sculpt, really nice figure. Cost me under 30 quid delivered from China. You really can't go wrong with something like that. It just makes for a good display piece, if nothing else. Probably not something that, you know, I'm never going to invest in season 2 characters. I'm not really bothered about Grapple, Hoist, Inferno, anyone like that. But Powerglide's pretty cool. Again, tracks here, MP25. Wow, I remembered an MP number. He fits into that category really. A bot that I picked up as part of a package. I think I got him with Bag Cubes Brawny. He cost me, I think, 15 quid. Didn't come with a flight stand, which I was a bit annoyed about, because my intention was to display him in his flying car mode. But I like the colours. I mean, I really like the sort of metallic blue paint. It's not a great mould. I mean, there's quite a lot of gaps in it. It's quite flimsy. The feet don't peg in properly. But from what I understand, that was an issue with the original mould. It does have rubber tyres, which the Takara version doesn't have. It comes with the mini Raoul and blaster accessories as well, which I quite like. And yeah, I like the G1 Trax toy, and actually this is quite close to the G1 Trax toy. I mean, obviously it's better built, better design, better articulation, more toon accurate, but I was a big fan of the original G1 toy. I thought it was a really cool figure. It was one of my favourites, so it's a nice little homage to that, if nothing else. Now, this figure looming in the background is really, I wouldn't have it here if I had room in the other detail, because technically it's a season 1 character, although not a More Than Meets the Eye out character. But it is it's none other than Skyfire, or Jetfire if you're old school like me. And oh god, I love this figure. It's Fans Toys Phoenix, for those who don't know. It's by far and away the best third-party Jetfire. I mean, there's no competition. Kronos is rubbish. Even the Siege Jetfire that's come out, the official Siege Jetfire, it's just not a patch on this. And even the X version of this, to be honest, I mean, for the money it costs, and it's got pearlescent paint and slightly more uniform red, but it's not chromed like it was supposed to be, and it costs a hell of a lot more. I didn't get this the first time around. I was forced to pick it up secondhand, and oh god, I was thinking I was going to have to pay through the nose. But I actually ended up, just by a complete fluke of eBay timing, I ended up picking it up for just under 150 quid, which was less than the retail price when it was new from UK retailers, like Caparo, etc. The reason being, I think that the seller listed it at some stupid time of the night, and most people weren't idiotic enough to stay up until that time to bid on it until the last minute. I was, and I got it, I think, for 147 quid in the end, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I've still got my original G1 Jetfire and the Macross figure that it's based off, which I used to use as my Skyfire or Evil Decepticon clone when I was a kid. I've got those in my lounge on another Detolf, which has all my G1 combiners and headmasters in. They're sitting on top of that, looking pretty good, I might add. But this is just another level. I mean, in terms of tune accuracy, this is probably one of my favourite figures. It reeks of cartoon goodness in both modes. I mean, I don't transform my figures a lot, but this one I've transformed more than most because I think the jet mode is awesome. It's actually a pretty simple transformation as well, considering the size of the figure. It's not an overly complex figure either. I mean, it's not got the greatest articulation, and you know, I'm sure people can pick fault with it, but just for pure like shits and giggles, it is undoubtedly one of my favourite masterpiece figures, or masterpiece scaled figures, and I can't see anyone coming along and doing better than this, really. Not significantly better. I'm over the moon with this guy, and I heartily recommend that you pick him up if you have the chance. And this brings me neatly on to the Behemoth next to him, behind these other guys. And that is another character that I didn't have as a kid. I had a clone of him, but I'll go into that in a second. But this is obviously none other than Omega Supreme, here represented by the, oh god, I've forgotten, DX9, that's it, the DX9 version, Gabriel. Now, I saw the Fans Toys version, and it was more expensive than this, and I didn't like it as much. It wasn't as tune accurate. It had issues standing properly and a bunch of other stuff. I honestly, this is so tune accurate, or so close to tune accurate, I fell in love with it the second I saw it. It's the most expensive figure in my collection at nearly £300. I have a real love-hate relationship with it for a number of reasons. But as I said, I had the grandstand converters. I think it was a Megatron. I still have that figure upstairs. It is, you know, it was kind of my Diaclone, if for want of a better word, alternate version of Omega Supreme. I used to use it in place of him as a kid, and I loved it. But I've longed for something with this scale, this presence, and this G1 accuracy, and I think this is fucking awesome. It's fucking awesome when you're stood here or sat here looking at it like I am now, in a pose, just the presence. I mean, look, Phoenix is a big figure. I mean, it dwarfs most masterpiece scaled Carbots and even things like Prime and that. And then you look at that, you know, Gabriel's bent over and he's still pretty much twice as big as Phoenix. The only issue I had with it is the QC fucking sucked. So I got this figure last year sometime, I think it was last June, something like that. And I was so excited. Massive box, got it delivered to work actually, and I opened it and it looked amazing, and I put it together, and inside of an hour the fucking thing broke. And it broke because It's pretty well documented by now. There were loads of QC issues with the figure, moisture getting into it, whatever. It caused the joints to seize. So when I took it out of the packaging, it moved relatively freely. It was a bit stiff, but you know, relatively freely. Within the hour, it had started to seize. Obviously, I didn't know that was the case. So it has individually articulated shoulder pads as well as the arms. So I was gleefully going about manipulating it, standing on one leg to show how poseable he was and how he could support his own weight and various cool poses for such a big figure. And I wanted to move the arms up. I went to move the shoulder pad. It was a bit stiffer than I expected, but, you know, I didn't know that. So I tugged on it and a piece of plastic sheared off from the ratchet, shot out, nearly took my eye out, in fact. Yeah, broke the ratchet in the shoulder pad. I mean, it doesn't actually affect the operation because it's so stiff that it still moves. It just, I mean, if I can demonstrate, this one is a little bit of a click. That's not going to do it too much because it still seems like it's seizing. But the other one doesn't, in the other shoulder, that does not click anymore. It just kind of slides under friction. Doesn't really affect it because you only move those shoulder pads if you're moving the arms on that particular axis, which I don't normally because I leave in pose like this. But still, it was a bastard for an almost £300 figure less than an hour after taking him out of the box. What was worse was that all of the other joints then froze to the point that they would not move. I would have snapped all of them pretty much if I tried, the arms especially the left arm, which is what I wanted to manipulate. Didn't know what I was going to do. I contacted my retailer. I won't mention their name. I will say that they're probably the most well-known and biggest UK Transformers retailer. They didn't really fucking want to know, to be honest, which is one of the main reasons I've not really used them since, apart from in like extreme cases where I can't source figures from elsewhere. But I mean, you know, I rang up, told them of the issue, and actually they kind of laughed at me on the phone, which I thought was pretty fucking shitty. Even shittier was the fact that not long after that they started selling them off cheap online on their Facebook page, without ever offering me an option to get a cash back on it, a little bit of a rebate for my trouble, for, you know, for my disappointment. From, you know, they were my seller at the end of the day. I realise they import these things and they're not responsible for designing them, but as far as customer care went, it was shit, and it's cost them hundreds, if not thousands of pounds worth of business. So suck it. Anyway, I'm not bitter, but what I did in the end was I went over to B&Q. I'm lucky enough to have one over the road from my house, and I went over there and I managed to get some silicone spray, and I used like a little straw to put that into the joints, sprayed the silicone spray down it so it got in everywhere, and honestly it was like I waved a magic fucking wand. It freed up the joints within about 30 seconds and I could move him and everything. It was like it was new. I haven't really transformed or manipulated him since last June, July, whenever it was I got him. Mainly because, as I said, I don't really transform my figures. Although he does look awesome in his alt mode with the rocket base and tracks and, you know, tank set up and everything, I think he looks much better like this. I just want him as this huge character in the background looking super boss. I'm quite happy to leave him like this. I don't want to play with him. I still think that the joints are probably going to snap or break if I do that. The arm design isn't great anyway, the way it's a big single screw that goes through in one piece. I've seen that break on other people's figure. Basically, I've seen this figure break all over the shop. There's a number of threads on forums about it, both Chinese and English. It's such a shame because it's such a beautiful figure. It looks amazing in both modes, really, especially bot mode. But the QC, they screwed the fucking pooch and then didn't want to know. So then retailers didn't want to know, and yeah, it's a bastard. But what are you going to do? These things happen. It's part of the joy of the hobby, shall we say? You've got to accept that these things, they come from China. The companies don't really care, you know, they've got your money. You don't have any after sale support, shall we say. It's not like you bought it from a UK or an American or whatever, a European company. You just have to hope you get a good one. And I know a lot of people, after the initial water issues, because that was what the problem was, it was moisture in the box causing the joints to seize up. And a lot of people ended up with ones that had fungus on and things like that, or black mold or whatever. I was lucky I didn't have that, but it definitely had issues with seizing joints. So, yeah, I mean, I just have to count my blessings that it could have been a lot worse. It hasn't fallen apart, and I'm not planning on changing his pose, that option. I just like him standing here looking awesome. But yeah, like I said, every time I look at it now, I've got this kind of like, part of me is such mixed feelings. Part of me is like, oh my god, he's amazing, and the other part of me is like, fucking thing cost me 300 quid almost and broke out the fucking box almost. Anyway, moving on. I still recommend him, by the way. I think if you're looking at a masterpiece size Amiga Supreme, this is the best option. I mean, Fans Toys is okay, but it comes in 2 pieces or whatever, and it's more expensive, and it's not as G1 accurate, and it doesn't look as good as this anyway. So I still recommend it. Bad DX9, no, bad QC. Goes back to Richtofen as well. Anyway, now moving on, this is my last Autobot in the Detolf. Now, this should really be in Season 1 again. You can see what it is. Can you see what he is? Can you tell what he is yet? No, I shouldn't do that impression now, should I? That's a bit dodgy, given revelations. Yeah, I think that, like, Dinobots is essentially where I'm going with this. Stuttering and spluttering all over the place. I like the Dinobots, not from the cartoon. I hated the way they were in the cartoon, these dumb thing. I just hated the cartoon Dinobots anyway. I like the way they looked, just hated their interpretation of them. But I love the comics versions. But when I say I love the comic versions, I loved Grimlock and I loved Swoop because they had characterization. The others were pretty much just faceless, you know, drones. Didn't really do anything. They were in group scenarios, but they didn't do anything else. When it came to a masterpiece collection, I had to make a decision. The Dinobots are very expensive. I'm not that married to them or invested in them. I didn't want to go back and buy the Fans Toys versions because they were very expensive. I ended up saying, fuck it, I'm going to pick up Grimlock. That's all I really want. But MPO8, or 08, I should say, is really tragically undersized compared to what he should be. So I ended up going for the Reximus Prime KO in Toon colours, which is potentially a little bit too big scale-wise, but I'd rather, you know, bigger's better and all that with Dinobots. And I think he looks great. I mean, it is literally just an oversized MPO8, as you can see, pretty much identical down to the dodgy chest logo that doesn't pop up properly. I've actually wedged mine up, the faction symbol I mean, so it's permanently stuck in that position. I'm not going to have him in Dinobot mode, or dinosaur mode I should say, even though that does look cool. Again, not, you know, it's a bit of a cross between Toon and Toy, but I love it. I think it looks really imposing. It's great. I like the fists are shit, obviously, because of the light up gimmick. They could have done much better with that. But I don't really do much with it. He's holding his gun, he's holding his Energo sword, or Energo sword, however you pronounce that. Got his little crown on, you know, for his delusions of grandeur. I've got him with Toon accurate blue chromed eyes instead of the red ones, but I do like the fact there's the gimmick to change them in both bot and alt mode. I just think it's a great looking figure, not Toon accurate, you know, quite big, quite kibbly, quite flimsy as well, really, for what it is. It's got all the stupid gimmicks of the tail waggling and head bobbing and all that sort of shit. But if you're just going to have him stood there looking like, you know, he could beast mode anyone at any given time, this is hard to beat, especially for the money. I mean, again, I picked this up off of a Facebook group for like 50, 60 quid, I think, second hand. You know, really good buy. It's that much on eBay, so I didn't care about having to get it from a Facebook group. I got it quicker than if I'd ordered it from China, and I knew it was in reasonably good nick. I think it's a great piece. If you're not bothered about Dinobots like I'm not, if you only really care about one or two characters, this is the way to go. I mean, I would have liked Swoop because I never owned Swoop as a kid. You couldn't get him in the UK generally, but I don't care enough to get the whole lineup of Dinobots from Fans Toys or Giga Power or whatever. None of them particularly Toon accurate anyway. Fans Toys more so than Giga Power, but I just like how big this guy is, and yeah. So that concludes my Season 2 / Season 1 offshoot lineup. I'll be back with a part 3 of this series, which will focus on my Season 1 Decepticons, and then I'll probably move on to a Season 3 movie Decepticons, and then an odds and sods Season 2, Season 3 Decepticons. I mean, come on, there's already a sneak preview of where I might be going with some of the other stuff right here, but I'll come back to those later. And then just a couple of the other little bits and pieces that don't fit in anywhere that I've had leftovers, you know, my alt modes and things like that. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying it so far. And yeah, stay tuned if you're interested.